Thank you for listening to Pow Block Podcast, the flagship Nintendo podcast of Boss Rush Network. Do you need even more gaming and entertainment in your life? Head over to bossrush.net where you can find news, reviews, creators, podcasts, and more focused around the content you enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome to Nintendo Expansion Pass here on Boss Rush Network. We are in the building. Joining me this episode, and I'm so excited that I finally get to record with this guy. I met him in person. I asked him a question at his cookout, and we literally could have had a 45-minute podcast on this episode. He is the founder of SixFive Media and Another Zelda Podcast, who also, you guys should know that Miss Celeste Roberts, the Celestial Rush, is part of, along with Stephanie, Shay, and other people that you know at Boss Rush Network. You know, they all come from Another Zelda Podcast, and this guy, I'm so excited to introduce him. If you haven't seen his 1v1 with Celeste, go and watch it, learn, enjoy it. Everybody, please welcome the one, the only, the legend himself, Mr. David Geisler. Hello,
oh my gosh, Ed, thanks for having me. That was so funny. What? That was one heck of an intro. I really appreciate that. That was really nice. I was as you were going, you said the legend, and I rolled my eyes and I thought, oh my gosh, he's totally overshooting it. But then I realized you were doing a pun, weren't you?
Yes.
And then I was like, all right, I love it.
Yes. Also, David joined me, Celeste, and Stephanie to talk about Gree on Talk the Walk. So go check out that episode. If you don't know what Another Zelda Podcast is, what are you doing? You are missing out on some great content about the Legend of Zelda series, about the games, the lore, the characters, the story, and more, even the places. Like, you are missing out. So do go check out Another Zelda Podcast and check out other podcasts at SixFive Media. Turn by Turn is a JRPG podcast with Dan and Chris, and they got just so much shows over there. So guys, go support them, and check out their merch store. You might like some of their merch, and support them. But thank you, David.
I'm pleased to be joining you. You and I were having a cross-company meeting yesterday.
Yes.
And it came to be that it worked out that we were able to get together for this recording for this episode, and it was a bit serendipitous, and I'm really pleased to be here.
You are welcome. So as you guys know, Corey couldn't make it this episode. He is very busy. Destiny has a lot of content coming, and he just has to dig in. So I asked David to come in, and we kind of got, while we was talking through the meeting, I kind of asked David if he could come on the show, and then I hit him with a question because we ended up talking about Portal 2 for a second. And I was at work and I thought about it. I was just like, you know what? I don't think I may have had this question with other people, but I have never really got down to the fact that our topic is going to be about what makes a game your personal favorite. What does it take to do it? And David, I want to ask you, like, what elements does that for you to make it like your personal favorite game? It's not the top, it's not the game of all time, but it just makes it a favorite of yours.
Yeah, that's a good point. People talk about that with movies sometimes too. It's like, what's your top 10 best movies of all time, but then your top 10 favorite movies of all time? Those are two very different lists a lot of times, and I think it's true for video games as well. And what's really interesting about video games is that there's such a wide palette of what people can enjoy and what they might enjoy about certain games. Some people might be looking for graphics, gameplay, story, and different variations of all of it. For me personally, I think when when those elements come together in a way that I feel is very seamless, in my opinion, very much like Portal 2 is a tremendously seamless game. It's a beautiful game, the cutscenes, quote unquote, are pretty much blended right into the experience of playing the game. It's a puzzle game, and it gives, but it's still very experiential, and it has a lot of I guess world building around it and stuff like that. And that is why, in fact, what we were talking about in the meeting yesterday, we were sharing some thoughts about Zelda and some other games, but I actually confessed to you that the truth is I love Zelda games. I love all of them. I do the Zelda podcast, but I love Zelda games. Like, look behind. Well, it's Zelda and Jurassic Park are my two kind of like favorite things. And Hillian, I think Hillian Gamer something. He did a 1v1 with you guys, and he talked about how much he loved Jurassic Park as well. And I'm not ashamed to admit I got a lot of Jurassic Park sitting all over my desk over here, mixed with Zelda. But with what I'm so sorry, I'm getting like totally off topic here. But
we can take expression pass here.
What I mentioned to you yesterday was, I said, secretly my hot take is that actually Portal 1 and 2 together as a single game is actually my favorite video game of all time.
Yes. And I know when I was talking, I mentioned Portal 2. I know for that game, it's definitely the writing. It's the comedy that's in that game. It's not so much the puzzles, because, to me, it's just like, oh, I figured it out. I'm like, oh, that's a cool use of the portals. And then I could go on. But it's like that spot on writing. It's the deadpan anger that's just like, I cannot believe that you did this. And it's just like, I don't know how Gladys, I think.
Yeah, I call her Gladys. Yeah,
Gladys. Like how sometimes she's like angry at you, and it's so deadpan because she's like a robot speaking. Like, it's so funny. It's just that writing in that game is so good. Like, as much as the puzzles are great, I could zone into Tetris more than I can in Portal 2.
Yeah,
but it's literally the writing and the delivery of the writing that I enjoy in Portal 2. That makes it doesn't be like, okay, now I understand why this is a perfect 10, why this is a game of the year.
Yeah, that's true. And if we're speaking about like what makes a favorite game, if I'll speak personally then and say that I used to play back in the GoldenEye days and a little bit of the Halo 2 days. I played a fair amount of first-person shooters, but honestly, for the past decade, I really don't anymore. Not by choice; it has nothing to do with anything. It's just the way where my gaming taste is moving. However, having Portal be a first-person puzzle game and it's not an adventure game. It's very linear, but it's definitely an experience. It was a great way to use the first person perspective. A first person puzzle game. It's very difficult to make. Remember how hard like jumping around in that original Turok for Nintendo 64 was?
Yes.
Because it was a first person platformer or whatever, like it had platforming elements. It was just horrible. So I think doing a first person puzzle game, other than maybe Tetrisphere for the Nintendo 64, which I also love very much, it's hard to pull that off. And I think Valve did that with Portal, and they're so good at their world building and all of the then they brought, was it Stephen Merchant, I think, came in? Was it him or was it someone else for the second game? And then he had the crazy voice and all of that stuff. But Ed, when you're, and I guess actually this comes down to like, I have a couple favorite games right now. It's City Skylines, 100%. The game I play the most right now is City Skylines. I absolutely love that game, and I love like world built like God games or whatever they call them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like Sim Cities, basically. That might even be my favorite more than Portal right now. For you, how do you classify a game as being a favorite?
Well, definitely for me, it's always going to be characters. It's going to be about their story, their background, where they're coming from. Sometimes how relatable I can be to that character, but most of the times how other characters relate, like whether it's a love story or whether it's a relationship where they're working together. I tell people, and they look at me crazy and weird about this, that The Last Guardian to me is the best PS4 game on that whole console. And people look at me just like a game that really no one played, and the way that you had to deal with Trico, who was this bird dog and stuff. I'm just like, yes, the thing about it is that yeah, it takes some time getting used to. Yes, you might get frustrated, but when you see the relationship that they have throughout this game, it's natural. It's something that Nintendo can't do. It's something that Microsoft can't do, regardless of what graphics or powerhouse or developer that you could give that game to. No one can do this
Mm,
besides Team Eco that did it. And I went through that whole game. I when I brought it at $60 the day that it came out, and that's all I stood back and played, and it was just like, wow. I'm like, people are not getting this game. Yes, they're talking about the controls and Trico and stuff, but I'm just like seeing Trico get wet and then shaking, and
yeah.
it's looking beautiful. But but also seeing that, how he calms down when your main character gets on top of him and pets him and everything.
Yeah.
The way that Trico's protecting the boy, and it's just it's such a great way on how they use a flashback on how the game starts, and then at the end you get the reveal of like
Oh.
what happened, and it's just it's so fleshed out and well thought out, and that when I finished the game and I put it down, I was just like, this is the best game because of this relationship.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
I do want to go back and replay it, but it was just like no one has done a relationship like this. I always call it, this is Sony's Nintendo game in a
I mean,
sense.
yeah, I may I jump in for a second? I think I
Yeah, go
agree
ahead.
with you. I have like a super old. I mostly have Nintendo games, but I'm very happy to play other Xbox and PlayStation games and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But usually I'm pretty satisfied with my Nintendo games. Um, However, I have an old PS2 and I have Eco and Shadow of the Colossus that I've eventually found through used game stores and stuff.
Yes.
And when the trailer for The Last Guardian came out, and that was a long time ago, it was maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
like because it when the first one came out, because remember it took a couple years for that game to come out too. I think it even got pushed back by like one console generation. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it did.
yeah, oh my gosh, I loved the trailers for that game when they were being released, and it was enough to make me think like this might be the game that gets me to buy a PlayStation day one or whatever instead of buying it 9 years later, used or something like that, which is what I usually do. And I think my draw to that game, at least what was happening in the trailers, was you kind of worded it where I wouldn't say it's for. I'm saying this, you didn't say this. The Nintendo-ness of the game was very attractive to me. But that also doesn't mean that a game has to be Nintendo-y to be a
Yeah.
good game. But I think what I heard you circling around, if I may, was the idea that all these elements, like polish. Essentially, it's polish, isn't it?
Yes.
I just realized.
And it's because I think when I say this is like a Nintendo game, sometimes I'd be like, some people can't do what Nintendo does in a sense. You could try, you could imitate and copy or pay homage, but
Mhm.
there's something about it that speaks of, this is definitely Nintendo. You can't say that, oh, this is Sony's version that Nintendo was doing. You can't say anything like that. You would literally say, oh, Sony is doing this that Nintendo has done, and I can see the elements. But in a sense, and yes, I know this that sounds crazy and it looks crazy, but it's just like Nintendo doesn't do relationships like Sony does. And
I mean, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. I'm fixing my camera. Sorry about this.
oh, no, that's good. And it's just like when the relationship is deep and many, even though there's not a lot of communication between Trico and the boy. I think I called him John in my review or something. It's very meaningful. It's very deep. And it's just like, there's times that when I put a controller down after finishing the game and I'm speechless, and I feel emotional inside that I want to say something, and it's just like I'm going to be speaking into the void because I know nobody's going to hear me because of what this game is. People have already made up their mind of what this game is, but I still want to say something about it because it's going to, hopefully my words, as controversial as I may be sometimes, as much as I'm the Nintendo guy and everything, I love to pick people's interests to be like, okay, if he's saying this, his actions and are matching his words and stuff, I may get it. And I need to, if he says see the whole game through, because trust me, there's been more frustrating games that people have saw all the way through who has been like, oh, I can't believe I played this whole game, and everything, and it's just like they get nothing out of it. But I'm like, you would definitely get something out of this.
I see.
Another game that kind of like one of my favorite indie games is Rhyme.
Yeah,
and
I haven't played it, but I'm very curious.
Oh, Rhyme is just something that, it's a great puzzle, but I go back to that, and even though it's not a relational thing, it was an emotional journey, and definitely at the end part. I'm not gonna ruin for you, David, but it was a piano accompaniment or composition that really just spoke to me for this whole game. I actually reached out to the composer of it, and this composer, I think he won a Grammy for one of these games. He's won awards and everything. Awesome. And I told him, I was just like, I don't know if a lot of people notice your work or saying anything about you. I'm like, but your final piece in Rhyme really spoke to me and really capture what this game is about, and really is, to a lot of people, kind of a soundtrack to people's life in a sense. And it was, and I think when we were talking about greed, why I brought up Rhyme, because that's
right.
It has that, it has a similar feeling about it, where greed's a whole different thing. Greed is because of this artwork, and that became why it became a favorite. And I related to it because I love drawing. I'm not a great artist, but I love getting the zone of just creating, of just drawing. It's not the best work, but it's something that I can read, that I love doing. I love seeing people create art and everything. And I applaud people and everything because I'm such a fan of art.
You know, I just thought of something as you were talking about all that. I plus one on all of that. I love it. I do think some of the criteria that I use for a game, when I start to realize a game is one of my favorite games, and City Skylines does not fit into this category, but it fits into what you were just talking about. Whenever a game I'm going to say it in a weird way. Whenever a game can feel like it's not a game, and what I mean by that is, at least, the thing that we were both so impressed about with Gree was its aesthetic and its art style, and how, in the olden days of like a Mario Brothers 1, 2, or 3, you see all the little cubes and the blocks, and you know exactly how to move around, and that is part of Mario's aesthetic, and it's maintained. That's fine. But to be in Gree and to be in a game where you're not really, there really isn't levels. There's some mechanics, but it's all very vague. Is really exciting. And I guess Portal 2 did that for me too a little bit, even though there's literally levels in Portal 2 or the Portal experience. Somehow there's like glue between it, and when it breaks and you have to go inside the walls and all that stuff, it does feel like a continuous story, and I think I really enjoy that very much. I wanted to ask you about Ryan a little bit more. It's a side scroller, right?
No, it's a 3D adventure game.
Oh, is this game. Oh, so it's behind a character kind of?
No,
angle?
you actually see the character. It's like a third person action.
Yeah.
So it's like Ratchet and Clank or something, or like The Legend of Zelda. Or it's like where you can see your character and interact with different things in the world. There's not. Oh, go ahead.
Please, I'm so sorry. I just remembered something else I was thinking about while you were talking. I think you're onto something with this. You mentioned that, for example, The Last Guardian was able to do a relationship better than like Nintendo can, and I think that's a pretty interesting point. And I agree with you. I think part of Nintendo's brand, you're very rarely do you like well up with tears from a character speaking to another character in a Nintendo game. The closest, in my opinion, it's ever gotten is maybe some scenes in Breath of the Wild, honestly. Like, it's very rare for a Nintendo game, a first-party Nintendo game, to have a large emotional like large emotions. Sometimes you go,
Yes.
oh, that was nice, that was sweet. The ending to Super Mario 64 with the music when it's sliding around all the levels, still like to this day, like when I was a little kid, it choked me up because it was just like reflecting on the experience. But that's not the same as the kind of thing you were talking about. And I think you're really onto something there. I also appreciated that you said that one of the things you use for your favorite criteria for favorite is character. And I think I don't do that as much. And I have to kind of consider that a little bit. Maybe I need to pay a little closer attention. What is it about character for you that that is so impactful?
I think it's because of the I was going to say behind the scenes, but what makes that character? What is their story? How do they really feel? How would they react? And how do I connect to it? Because one of the things was, I always go to Final Fantasy IX, and I always say that Vivi is one of my favorite characters, which makes Final Fantasy IX is a great game with the story, gameplay, characters, and all that. But what made Vivi stand out is just like the way that he was bullied reflects part of my life because I was bullied. And the thing about it is just like he was bullied on the terms of he wasn't like the other characters. And for me, it came to the fact that I was being bullied because I wasn't like other Black people in my neighborhood or my school. You know, I didn't do the things that they were doing or being that kind of troublemaker and stuff. And the stuff like there. And it was just like seeing Vivi through his story. I was just like, I connect to everything that they're saying and how they're making you feel. But then you realize the people that surrounded Vivi always encouraged him, always was by his side, never giving up on him. And when I see that, I'm just like, there are people in my life that do that for me, family and friends and stuff. And so that's why I think when I play Final Fantasy IX, and I know what happens to Vivi and stuff, but it's such a heartwarming story and stuff. But his character and everything, it just makes me like, okay, I know what this is. Didn't expect it, but I know what it is, and I can relate. So now I definitely enjoyed this game. It's one of my favorite games out of the Final Fantasy series. You know, and when it comes to cause and then like Auron, I love Auron for Final Fantasy 12. Like he's smooth and he's cool and everything, but he has a strength to him and character and everything. You know, yes, he has a style and his voice acting is great, but he has a strength to him that just like it's so reassuring that just draws me to him. And it's just like I'm like, I'm not as strong as you, but you make me feel strong.
Interesting. I see where you're going with this. Did you start playing video games at a super young age, Ed?
Yes, I started playing video games at the age of what I could remember at the age of 5.
Yeah.
So 1985, my parents had Pac-Man, they had the Atari, they had Mario Brothers. But I was playing games like Combat, Pole Position. I would go to the arcades and play like Outrun, Double Dragon, Alter Beast, Shinobi. Like wow. I was playing so much, and even it was weird that I couldn't play, I couldn't get into the Nintendo games at the arcade. I even tried Punch Out like way later on. Didn't know that Punch Out had an arcade game. Right. Couldn't get into those games, but I was into the Sega arcade games and like Taito and Trade West and just like all of these other games, even pinball I was into. I was playing all of these games at the arcade because I felt like this was a different lifestyle of game. So all I could think of like as a kid was while I feel like I have no friends and stuff, video games were my friends. So that's why when it comes to video games and relationships, I relate to Nintendo so much because it was Super Mario Brothers that made me realize that, hey, this is what challenge is. This is what being a gamer is. This is why I know this music. This is why I love Nintendo, because in actuality, that when Nintendo was my first, the NES was my first console that I got to own. And so
Okay.
and so my relationship with Nintendo was, I didn't have friends, but I had a friend in Nintendo. And any challenge that they threw at me, I was able to overcome.
Wow, Ed, that's I think that's really beautiful. Some people will speak about like reading books to be an experience that gives them that. I think we're almost the same age, by the way. If you were 5 in '85, and I was late to video games because my parents were. It's not that they were against video games; they just weren't like very supportive of video games. So most of my grade school, I had to go to other people's houses and play, and it was that kind of thing. And then finally, somewhere around, I don't know, maybe 5th grade or something like that, we got a family Nintendo NES, and I do think it's nice to have these tools of media, these artistic inputs that allow us to kind of channel our emotions when we're younger and kind of process what's happening to us.
Yes.
Sometimes people listen to music to do that. But the one thing that I really liked about what you said, if I may, was like the fact that it was almost it was like for personal growth. There's challenges set in front of you, and it gave you it wasn't just listening to a song and reflecting, reading a book and thinking about it, watching a movie and considering what the movie's all about. It's there's a literal objective when you play these games. Maybe the same way that someone might try to run a mile and then run a mile and a half the next day and then run 2 miles the next day, or however it works. I don't know. I'm not a very good runner, but I think that's really neat. I don't know. I'm actually kind of getting a little overwhelmed with thought here right now. I'm starting to lose my point. But I appreciate you sharing all that. Did you live a little bit north of Chicago, like where you live now, growing up?
Where I live now is where I've been at most of my whole life.
Yeah.
So I am an hour out of Chicago, but like halfway to Gurnee, so like 25 minutes to Gurnee.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's
so
right.
So while you talking about God games and like city skylines, when Roller Coaster Tycoon came out,
yes,
that became my favorite PC game. And it's
Yes.
because of as a kid, I was a big lover of roller coasters. And there was something about the design. And once I got to like really ride them and get over my fears of going upside down, my mind was just like, I want to create roller coasters. And didn't realize, where do I start? And realize that it starts with science, my nemesis.
Your nemesis.
Science is I could not get into science. I love science. I love people who do documentaries and break it down and really like get into the nitty-gritty and stuff. But I was more into art than I was into science.
Interesting.
And so when it came to roller coasters, it was just like, oh, physics, gravity, doing all of this, being like very nerdy. I love people who like that. So when Roller Coaster Tycoon came out, I wasn't thinking about business and making a park. I was about creating roller coasters.
Yeah, sure.
So
did you ever go down to zero and then you wait to get a little more money and add the next track and then add the
Yep. And I had to take out roller coasters so I could have money to make more. So we get side tangent.
I love it. I love this because I love Roller Coaster Tycoon too. I just don't want to interrupt.
Yes. Me and Corey have an optional opinion where we talked about the first 3 games of Roller Coaster. So Roller Coaster Tycoon. I didn't play 2, but I know about 2, and I'm just like, I missed it because I wasn't. I just didn't go buy it. But Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, when I got my first PC, I bought the game for it. And the reason I bought it was because I can make all the roller coasters that I want.
And with 3, then you can like put the camera in the front of the car and watch the whole thing. Oh man,
yes.
Good times.
Yes, and that's what I did. I actually made a roller coaster that had the color of Samus suit from Metroid.
Oh, cool.
And it was just like twists and turns and curves and stuff, like it was the Morph Ball.
I love it. That's
and
great.
everything. And so I didn't play the full game. It's just like I just want to make roller coasters because that
I
was
see.
my love. That was my way to get around of designing roller coasters without having to learn science about it and everything.
I remember my dad when I was at a young age. My dad he was very excited to tell me about. Now notice on a roller coaster, the tallest hill is the first hill because this is before like launches and LAM,
Yeah.
whatever. But and he said that's because that's gravity. It's building up potential energy, and the coaster it can only use the energy that it earns to get through the rest of the ride. And I remember being like, "Wow, this is amazing."
Yeah.
I played Roller Coaster 1, Tycoon 1. I think we were close to the same age. I think I played it like late high school into college, and then 2 came out somewhere around being in college. To this day, I have Roller Coaster 1 and Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 on my iPad.
Nice.
Loaded at all times. I did buy Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 for the Switch as well. It went on sale, I don't know, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not great.
Exactly. I cannot play that with the Pro controller.
The UI is a little rough, but I still play it when I really have a hankering. But the UI is a little rough.
Yeah, I uninstalled it on my Switch, so it's up in the cloud, waiting for download.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's like it'll be Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, Jurassic World Evolution, City Skylines, and then Stranded Deep are like my 4 like hot games that I jump into a lot. But Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 is a lot. Do you know what really happens? A lot of times I pull up the Switch and I start playing. And I'm like, I'm just gonna go play it on the iPad.
Exactly, because playing with the mouse on Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 is a big difference playing with the controller, because I can actually get to where I need to be at to load the track or bring the grass and hill down and stuff. I'm able to control it. With the Switch, I was just like, I need touch functionality. This is not good at all.
I know. It was a little sad to see that there wasn't touch, especially when they already had touch, quote unquote, because they had created an iOS version or an Android version or whatever. I do want to give the designers a little bit of credit. They tried with the UI.
Yes.
With like holding an R button or an L button to pull up a radial menu, and then you dig into the radial menu. They tried. It's just not super elegant.
Yes. Just if it was like almost like a DS or 3DS where I could just use a pen and create with a pen, I'll be fine. I'll be good. But I can't do it with the Pro controller. No.
That reminds me when I played a lot of Super Mario Maker on the Wii U. I played a ton of it. I loved it. This is weird. I used to make themed levels for episodes of Another Zelda Podcast. So there was like a level where we talked about a certain amount of things, and then there was an episode where Kate and I would talk about something in season 1, and then I'd go and I'd design a level that like thematically tracked the things we talked about, and I try to theme it to Zelda and all that kind of stuff. But when I was really excited to play Super Mario Maker 2 on the Switch, and it's fine, it's okay. There's a lot of cool things on there. It's hard to resist. For me, it's hard to resist all the Zelda stuff that came in those later DLC packets.
Yes.
But when you said pen, it reminded me of this. I usually play Super Mario Maker 2 tablet mode, I guess you could call it, or handheld mode.
Yeah.
And I have a little like $3 iPad pen thing with a little rubber thing, and I usually play with a like a cheapy pen on my Switch instead of doing finger, just because it still feels like I'm like on the Wii U with the original Super Mario Maker. But anyway, I digress.
No, it's so weird that you mentioned Super Mario Maker 2, because I need to actually get back into that game and design something that feels like it's only 3 minutes that you're playing takes 3 days to make or something.
But that's the game. The game is making it. That's the fun part. Oh my gosh, it's like City Skylines. It's like SimCity. I think I like games where you make stuff. I think I just realized that's really what it is.
I get amazed to see when people build their cities and they just like, yeah, I did all of this. I'm like, how did you do that? My mind is just like, I cannot do all that planning.
I should do a little screen recording sometime, but I'm personally in City Skylines right now. I'm on my like fifth city that I've built. I've had the game for about 2 years, and the first city you build, it's horrible because you're still learning what you're doing and stuff. And I've built this one from the ground up, and I've titled it Hyrule, and all the little neighborhoods and boroughs that I'm building, I'm naming them after the appropriately like themed like towns and stuff from different Zelda games. So I definitely have like a Kakiri Woods. I definitely have a Kakariko Village area. I have a Laurelin Beach area way over on the side, and I'm only using like dirt roads and stuff like that. I'm having it, so I go into Hyrule via City Skylines constantly.
Oh wow!
I'm having a good time with it.
I can't do train simulator, even though I have a love for trains. Trains are one of my favorite things. If you take me to a train museum, I would be the most happiest person.
Yeah, wow, we have a lot of similarities. I love model trains as well. That's interesting.
Yes, my mom, she bought me a wooden train toy, and I just, it wasn't that many tracks, but every time that I went out and played it, I would just like, do the crazy 8 kind of style of train, or do the circle train, and I would just, we had the little magnets kind of trains. They actually gave me 3 of them, and I would just play that for hours, and then my dad would take me down to the metro to go just look at the metro train, and then the other trains and stuff. And now that when I get stopped by a train, I put my car in park and I just stay there and look at it. And the one thing that I look forward to, that I think your train is the best train, is how much graffiti I could see and how artistic it is. I love graffiti on trains.
So, I love it. It's so weird in such a good way. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool.
And then I put my car in drive and then drive off once the train leaves.
So again, it's a little bit the character, isn't it? You're always looking for stories and character. That's cool. That's cool. I wanted to ask you a question. I don't know how long we record an episode like this, but I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to ask you, do you feel that, in the last, 5 years, 10 years, doesn't really matter, in recent past, has there been a game that you've realized has become one of your favorite games, but it surprised you because maybe it's not the style of game you would normally consider to be a favorite?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Titanfall 2.
Wow. Okay, fair enough.
And I bring Titanfall 2 up because it was a game that had to go against I think Battlefield 5 or one of the Battlefield games in Call of Duty. Like, they released Battlefield in September, Titanfall 2 was in October, and like Call of Duty was in November. And out of those 3 first-person shooters, 2 from EA, 1 from Activision, Titanfall 2 had a amazing story, great multiplayer, amazing story, great voice acting, level design is bunkers. There's a level that you are kind of going vertical because you're in a factory, and there's one part where it takes your Titan, so you can't use him. So you got to kind of like get up and try to meet him in everything where he's in the factory. And you get to this one point where the factory, you're at the top, but the factory is making a landscape of houses and fire and everything. And so it makes this landscape, and it drops your Titan in there, and you and your Titan have to fight your way out.
Cool.
And it was just, it had a little bit of Metroid vibe to it, because like at parts you would get special guns and powers for your Titan. And just once again, it's that relationship, but it was just the level, from level to level. It even has a level that did kind of a portal thing, but it was doing it and there was just this one level that you went to the past to progress in the future.
Oh wow!
And it was doing vice versa, and you was learning the story, and it was just like, oh my goodness! I did not know that Titanfall 2 would tell a story, have great gameplay, have the sound in that thing, just the guns and the sound in it was just like, oh, this is probably the best level design first-person shooter I ever played.
Yeah, wow, that's great.
Wow. And it's still to this very day Yeah, still to this very day, Titanfall 2 is one of those games that you just got we do people do their best to get to get them to play it. Because I think it would have been a bigger hit if people would have paid the $60 and got the game when it came out. Titanfall 2, it sold okay, but for a lot of, I think it was the only game that outbeat a Nintendo game for Game of the Year for me.
Oh wow, yeah, wow.
And that's hard. it is because for a lot of the year that Metroid Other M came out, a lot of people were shocked that I made that my game of the year.
I have a complicated relationship with Other M because there's parts of it that I really do like a lot.
I can understand some of the story bits is jaggering. And I know there is some of like the cliffhanger thing, trying to find out who was trying to kill you and stop you and stuff. I understand all of that. I think that the thing I defend about it is that if you not have played earlier Koei Tecmo's Ninja Gaiden games,
right? Yep.
You wouldn't understand why this game is better than those. I always say it's not the difficulty of Ninja Gaiden. I could deal with that. It's that camera.
Oh, interesting. I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah. If you get frustrated with camera and games, Ninja Gaiden's camera will make you upset and want to throw the controller. They fix all of that in Other M, so you really get a action-packed game. And it's just like, okay, now I see why Metroid Dread is such action-packed and the cutscenes are done right, because it looks like they looked at Metroid Other M, took inspiration and ideas and design, and was just like, we can make this better.
I agree. When I saw the trailer for Dread, I still haven't played Dread. I love Metroid. I think I own every single Metroid game that's ever been made except for Dread so far. And I do go back and play Other M every 5 or 6 years. I'll dip back into it whenever I have my Wii U plugged in or whatever, I'll emulate it or whatever into the Wii. But when I saw the trailer for Dread, when sometimes Samus does those moves and the camera starts swinging around, I was like, oh well, this is Other M. That's great. They totally took notes from Other M.
Yes, and even though this was Team Ninja and kind of Nintendo's working relationship with Team Ninja, I just found it like we've never got a backstory of Samus. We never heard her speak. We don't know her emotions and how she feels about things. And yeah, the voice acting is kind of monotone, but that may have been the director telling the voice actor, this is what I want for the game. This is how we perceive Samus. So she's only delivering what they asked for and everything. And it was just like seeing the people disappointment with their game. It was just like, you haven't really studied Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo. You really don't understand the Metroid series in a sense, and how when both came together, why this game really matters and everything. Yes, love Metroid Prime, love the 2D Metroids, love everything about the Metroid series, but this one actually gives you something that you've been questioning and wondering.
I'm into that. I'm fine with that. Yeah, I like your assessment there. I really do, Ed.
Was that the year Gears of War came out? Probably. A lot of big people, a lot of big AAA games came out that's like, oh, this is the best. But I'm just like, we have a different thing on how we envision games sometimes. And just like, if you would have played this and understand, oh, he's a person that has played a lot of work from these developers. He has understand these ideas. Now I can see why this game is his game of the year.
Yeah.
And don't forget, everybody, Link Between Worlds, a game that was on the 3DS, got game of the year.
Did it really?
Yes. You didn't realize that? You didn't know that?
I never knew that. I'm playing it right now. I'm literally playing it right now.
Yes.
And I didn't know that about the game at all.
Yes, Link Between Worlds got so many game of the years when it came out. No one expected. I think it's one. It may be another one, but it's one of the first handheld games that has got game of the year that has beat out all consoles.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow. It's good. It's good. I'm liking it. Maybe it's because Breath of the Wild wasn't out yet, and it was going in a direction. A Link Between Worlds was, in my opinion, it was like a warm up into what we were going to get with Breath of the Wild a little bit, with having things be able to be out of order and stuff like that. I mean, cool. I'm into it. I like Link Between Worlds. It's one of the few games that I think uses the 3D of the Nintendo 3DS in the right ways, in a good way. Like it adds to the experience. Doesn't take away. There's never a moment when I'm playing a Link Between Worlds. I usually play Link Between Worlds with the 3D turned on, and there's never a moment where I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I want this. Once in a while, like I'll play Star Fox 3D, and then once in a while it's like, oh, I don't know about that. Let's turn this off.
I because of Link Between Worlds, I want Link in the Past in that style. I love Link's Awakening on Switch, but I don't want Link to the Past and Link's Awakening style, on that Playmobil style. I want Link Between Worlds because I'm like, this just fits this game. Like I could just see them redesigning Link to the Past in this beautiful art style, and it's just like, this is gorgeous.
It would be cool, And you know what? If they redesigned it and put it on the Switch or something, A Link to the Past. Okay, so I just got done saying that A Link Between Worlds, in my opinion, really uses the 3D in a great way. There's a lot of verticality in a lot of the levels, but A Link to the Past has less of that. It has a little bit of it, but less of it. Something that you can accomplish still on a two-dimensional screen.
Yes.
So if they were going to take that art style, this is kind of fun. If they're going to take that art style and put it onto like a Switch or something like that, something that's not 3D, it'd be fun.
Yes. Like, I want to see how all the chickens attack after you start hitting them with the sword. I want to grab that princess and take her into the light in the dark world in that castle. See, Link, a lot of people don't understand. I might have my feelings between Link to the Past. It's because it's a game that is a all-time favorite of mine. I love that game, but it's hard to go back because it's one of the games that I want to have amnesia every time I play that game. Because I want to experience everything for the first time in that game over and over again. I want to have that feeling because when I played Link to the Past, I didn't know. I knew where to go and what to do for some things, but it was still finding out secrets to that game, figuring out the dungeons, wondering, if I go to the dark world to do this, it affects the light world. And just realizing that when I got to Ocarina of Time, I'm like, wait a minute, they took that from, hold on, wait, Ocarina of Time is just a whole discussion to have. Sorry, but it was just like Link to the Past. I want to have amnesia over and over again every time I play that game because it feels like it's another one of those games that I wish I was experiencing just for the first time.
That's well said, Ed. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I've never actually asked. Do you prefer Ed or Eddie?
No, it doesn't matter.
Either way.
Yeah.
It's just because I feel so close to you now. I'm calling you Ed. I shortened up the name. But anyway. I really liked how you said that. I've never heard anyone. Maybe others have said that, but I've never heard anyone say it. I wish I had amnesia every time I play this game. I wish I was. Because it speaks to how strong the game is the first time you play it.
Yes.
And what that experience is. The experience of that. And actually, there's a lot of games where this happens, but definitely in Zelda games, sometimes walking around and not knowing exactly what you're supposed to do next is part of the game, and usually that's a good thing. It's like literally walking around in the real woods in the real world. Sometimes there's boring parts. Sometimes there's parts where you don't know exactly what you need to do if you're on a hike or something like that. And by the time you get through the whole thing, though, you're really pleased that you went on that hike. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's so weird because The Legend of Zelda, even though, yes, we have I brought it up. The Legend of Zelda, I feel like every time I play any of the games of the series besides Zelda 2, that needs a remake so bad with the fix. I need that game to be fixed. When I play like most of like the 16 like Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, when I definitely Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, when I play those games, even Twilight Princess, when I play them, I get lost in their world. And it's just like, there's something that's capturing me. And I love being captured. I love the level design of the dungeons. I feel like this is wacky enough for it to work in the Zelda franchise. I love fighting that ghost. I love fighting that ghost in Wind Waker because I get to grab him and play bowling with them and then smack the ghost. And smacking those ghosts is so funny. I'm just like, why does this boss level work? Like, I understand swinging from the dragon and his tail, but then smacking the ghost is just like with the chopped frame and everything. It makes me laugh, and I'm just like, this is great level design of a boss.
Smacking that ghost. That's hysterical.
when you hit those enemies in the Legend of Zelda, it has that smack sound, but it's doing those musical notes and stuff, and it's just like it's so crazy. Just the yes,
yeah, it's cool.
You know, Wind Waker has so many great moments. The ghost, the frozen time in that castle, and wow, you talking about fighting? It's just like, this is like Jean-Claude Van Damme craziness, and I want more of it.
Yeah, that's a good part of that game. Absolutely.
But it's just like, looking at this, and this is all being done in the cell shading look, and it's just like it pick of my favorite ones. It's just like Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time. It's just like, I feel like most of the games in the Zelda franchise are like equal. It's just like, this game's a perfect 10. This is the perfect 10. I can't. I know we did a ranking on Boss Rush. I know I call Majora's Mask a side quest sequel.
Got it.
And I was just like, it's so hard when they change the formula, but I enjoyed them changing the formula. I loved one of the best dungeons in the Zelda franchise is the sand castle or the sand dungeon in Twilight Princess, because someone says you get the dreidel of death in that time mechanic, but it's almost like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Once again, going back to as a kid with roller coaster design, loving that dungeon because of that, and then fighting that dragon.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. That whole final battle, that entire dungeon, I love very much. It is a blast. I was thinking about that just now. I guess what we're realizing is sometimes I suppose it can change over the years, but a lot of times what makes a game a favorite for someone is that they're affected by certain variables in their formative years. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that is cool. That is neat. They're literally like making their taste, their preferences as they grow. And I did realize that because I got my Nintendo later, it was only like 3, 4, 5 years later than everybody else when it was like really the hot thing, but it was late enough. And when you're a little kid, that's like an eternity. But I realized that when I was in like 2nd and 3rd grade, my dad started teaching me computer code before I got a Nintendo. And so I actually was learning computer code before I was able to play video games. And I think like you were speaking to how experiencing these stories in your formative years was really something that was really fulfilling for you. And I think I just realized why I like to always play games where you build stuff is because during some of those early formative years for me, I wasn't even playing video games. I was like just building weird little spreadsheets or something like that on a computer, like in QBasic and stuff like that. And so I think it's interesting to posit. If anyone's, whoever's watching and listening right now, it'd be interesting for them to kind of think about or perhaps comment about like what quirky little things in their youth, when, somewhere between being 5 years old and 12 years old, what, it forms you a little bit, doesn't it? I guess it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think that's why, Super Mario Maker I enjoy, because it's me being creative. While I love Mario Paint because I could draw, but also that music aspect creating
Yeah.
music and stuff. And like it's weird seeing people playing something like Ariana Grande, one of her songs on Mario Paint. It's just hearing it, and it's just like, even though some people emulate it and they kind of like change some things,
Yeah.
it's just like you're playing Rain on Me with Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande with barking sounds and cat meows and bananas and clouds and turtle shells, like and it's just like, I'm amazed on how this is, because we were doing that as kids, who owned it. We were making our own music, even though we may not be music majors or anything, creating the clashing and the harmony stuff. And you just didn't really think about that as a kid. And so I guess like that's why I said my relationship to games, or relationship in games, I enjoy that it becomes my favorite. And everything,
Yeah.
And for Zelda, reason why a lot of those games are my favorite, and my relationship to it is because of the beautiful art and the music. And it's just connecting to that. It's just like they make these pivotal moments recognizable, but they're just like, you're in the moment, you're enjoying it, you're actually linked to it. That was the thing why, like, why the name is Link. You're linked to the character, you're playing as the character.
Indeed.
But you sit down, you get into it, and you see the music. I mean, you see what's going on, you hear the music, you love little Link waving to Tetra and everything, and then the bird comes in and scoops Tetra up. You're like, no. And it's just like they built so much, and they build it right to, it's just like, we gotta go on this adventure.
Yeah.
And save it and everything. And it doesn't become just a video game, it becomes a venture. It becomes something, because the thing about it is, you're going to get caught up into it, and then you're going to see other people, your friends or family, or find someone who knows what you're talking about, and you're going to relate to
it. When Kate and I, my co-host on Another Zelda Podcast, when Kate and I started the show back at the very end of 2017, I kind of didn't care about the story or the characters very much at all when we first started recording the show. And I was very focused on the game design and how the game was being made and what the teams did in the background. And in that first season, a lot of the times my points are about that. And Kate's points were all about story and character, and she was very excited about that. Essentially the lore and all that kind of stuff. And it's been kind of funny because we've been doing the show for we're in the middle of our 5th season right now, and somewhere around season 3 for me, or even maybe later, maybe it was even earlier, maybe it was like late season 2, I started finding myself getting very excited about the characters. The more we did episodes and the more I had conversations with Kate, she, by proxy, I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it, I would start getting excited about the stories and the characters and all the different cultures and stuff that are in the different Zelda games. And now these days, I'm like full in. I see some kind of character and I get very emotional about it now. And it is kind of interesting how that works. And I think sometimes Kate will speak a little bit more about like the design of a game. So it's nice to be able to talk to people about this kind of stuff, because it broadens your awareness, and it broadens, like even literally the things, even just having this conversation with you today has been pretty rewarding for me, because obviously we have some similarities of the things we liked in the real world, and a little bit of playing games around the same time and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, you've really been speaking a lot about the artistry and the characters and the storylines of a lot of these games, and it's helping me like kind of consider the game, instead of just, besides my SimCity basically games, like the games that I play that have story in them, you're helping me kind of rethink about like, what do I do? What do I like about those things? And it's kind of nice. It's just nice to kind of get together and have these kind of conversations. You know what I mean?
And what you mentioned earlier about reading like books and stuff, I was a book nerd as a kid. I love going to the library. I love, still to this very day, if I'm at a dollar store, random dollar store, if I get lost in a dollar store, go to the book section. You will find me there. because I'm looking for all the mystery and thriller books because I love that kind of story. But as a kid, when I was going on trips with my mom, or we was going on family trips, my book bag didn't consist of a Game Boy. It consisted of 9 books. 9 books that I rented. I'm like, I had them. I got them for 25 cents. Books that I don't know about. Books I shouldn't probably have read, but I was in the car. I was in the car. I was reading just different books, and I was taken in about it, which led me to like creative writing in college and stuff, which I actually got yelled at for by one student. She's just like, why do you always write the depressing stuff? I was just like, because everything I write is supposed to keep you on edge, or it's supposed to be a twist about something. Everything else that everybody writes in here, they have a form. They have a form and they have an expression, but everything always feels the same. Your character gonna live, these two gonna fall in love because that's all you know. And my stuff is, it's kind of dark, it's kind of twisted, but it's also challenging because I get to be able to, as a creator, as an author of the story, I get to create something unexpected that you don't think it was what was going on. So yes, my stuff is dark at times, but it's dark in a way that you didn't expect it to be.
Let me ask you this real quick. If someone were to come to you, and we don't have to get into the specifics of a specific story you've written, but just broad strokes here. If someone came to you and said, "Oh, we'd like to take book X, Y, and Z or story that you've written or narrative you've written or whatever, and turned it into a video game," what style of game would you like to see them expressed as?
So one of them would be like an action game. Action game. But two would be, one would be a walking simulator, one would be an action game. So one of the stories that I wrote was called test skill, and what it was, I was testing myself, my skill, that I would write a paragraph of what the conclusion was. And then the next 3 paragraphs was telling the story. The last paragraph was the same. The first part was the same as the first one, the conclusion, but then it was the twist at the end. So one of it I wrote about this person left court and sat on the bench and cried.
Okay.
And then it was spoke about the challenges that she had with this other guy getting her child. And it sounded like that, as much as she did, it was never good enough. And she thought that she would lose custody of her kid to this man and everything. And then it goes back to she left the case crying because she realized that she is actually able to keep her kids.
Oh, and so the crying means a different thing. Oh, that's great.
Yes. So it doesn't reveal on why she was crying to the very end. So you got you got the part of the conclusion, but then you got the story. So I was doing the test was to tell the story on one sheet of paper.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's great. I love that.
The other one that I would probably turn to an action or adventure game, it was so it's I keep telling the title. It's called A Town Called Sin, and it was about this kid who wasn't allowed to go to church or anything, and he grew up. He finally turned like 15 or 16, and he wasn't able, to go to church, because if he went to church, something may happen. And the characters that he talked to or that tried to stop him or anything were characters from the Bible, were their name. Okay. And there was one thing, he had a talk with Jesus, but he could, something about him made his head go down. Like he couldn't look at Jesus or something. But they had a talk, and Jesus just told him, just like normally talking like as he was a human. The kid didn't know. And so what happens is that when he went to different places, the story would change. So one would be a comedy, one would be an action, one would be a drama, and one would be like it's in third person, but it's because the story is coming from the character and everything. And at the end, you find out that the town made a deal with the devil, and
I was wondering
to keep the town going. The devil, they promised the devil that if one of their members, one of the town people would have his kid. So when the resurrection or some war happened and the devil gets killed, he has a backup, which would have been his son. So what ends up happening is that at the final thing, it's kind of a war and everything. And the kid, he crucifies himself like Jesus.
Oof.
And so the devil doesn't get his son.
And the kid is the main character, right?
The kid is the main character. Right. And so Jesus so the devil is mad, leaves. The town kind of just like is in shambles. They kind of almost lost everything because the devil lost his son. But Jesus resurrects the kid, and now the kid is deaf.
Deaf? Deaf can't hear?
No, deaf as in I am the judge of taking your life now or not.
Oh, is death. Oh. Yes.
So now he doesn't take commands from God or Jesus or the devil, but he goes in and he's kind of like people's conscious innocence. He was just like, if you do this, know that I will take your life. And he tries to talk people out of it, but some people don't listen. He kind of sees their will is not strong, so he's just like, you need to get into church, you need to have faith, you need to do this, because if you don't, I'm taking your life. I'm in it. And I will make the judgment. I can't make the judgment of where you go, but I will touch you and take your life.
Right. Okay, cool. I mean, that'd make a heck of a video game.
Yeah. And so and because of the sin that the town did, creates death. And it's just an action-packed game doing all of that.
And you could have each level in the early parts of the game, in the first act or something, in each level could be, you were talking about how it's kind of themed a little different as this guy meets these different characters. Maybe a mid-act, maybe somewhere in the second act, the reveal. Maybe that's where that moment. Maybe it's at the end of the second act where where it's revealed what this kid is, and then, or maybe that's the end of the game and then there's a second game. But anyways, we could be here all day. That's cool, dude. Thanks for sharing that.
There's a train ride that is action packed. There's two characters. I forgot what I named them, but the weapons that they use is Cain and Abel.
All right.
So they're trying to use those weapons to kill him. Now Cain killed Abel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the guy who has Cain kills the guy who is using Abel. And so
okay.
Right. And so because somehow they're trying to stop this because they know what's going to happen. So they're trying to stop everything. The kid still doesn't know. So the guy kills the other guy with Cain. The kid grabs Abel, even though he's not supposed to touch it, and then kills the other ones. And then grabs both swords and throws them off the train. And what ends up happening is that Abel sword lands on Cain, and all you see is the blood falling out.
Yes, I see. My cat's getting a little persnickety here. I think he's going to be okay. He was doing this during our meeting last night too.
Oh.
He really wants to get out, but it's all good. That's cool, dude. I love
Yes.
that. I love that.
So
Oh boy, how do we define our favorite games?
yes.
I don't know if I've ever been surprised by you know what it is? I think I don't know. I think I don't realize a game's one of my favorites. Obviously it takes some time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of those where you realize you keep going back to it, or you realize you have certain memories about it or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's nice. We got a lot going on here. I got a lot going on in my head after this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes. What we did have the second part is our Nintendo games a good example, but I think I'm gonna save that. I think I'm gonna save that
Sure.
question.
Oh, I see. Yeah, and we kind of like flirted around that idea throughout this whole
Yes.
episode. We really did.
Yes.
Are
So-
Nintendo games a good example of being a person's favorite game?
Yeah. There's elements in a Nintendo game that makes it a favorite. Like it's Nintendo games, because for a lot of people that when they do a top 10 list or they do a list of games, if they're not required to add Nintendo or anything, they're probably gonna have a third party list. But I'm like, if you're able to, if you're, can add Nintendo games to your list or something, there's going to be one or two of it, and something about it has made it your favorite because there's elements in that game that makes it your favorite, and you just like, well, I love these elements in the game, so this is why Make My Videos my favorite, why Uniraces is my favorite, why Smash Brothers is my favorite, or something like that. You can literally find some elements in a Nintendo game to be like, okay, I understand why. It's my personal favorite, I should say.
Yeah, I see. Interesting.
I know a lot of people will be like, Make My Video, Uniraces. What the heck is Uniraces?
I loved Uniracers. I loved it. I was so excited when Uniracers came out. I wasn't very good at it, but I was very excited when it came out.
Same. But
he's literally scratching at the door. Can I just let him out of the room real quick? I know we're still on air and everything. I'll just be right back. Thank you so much, Ed. Go for it. Just vamp.
Yes. So everybody, like, it's good having a personal.
All right, I'm back in. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
He was kind of, you know how the cats are. He's starting to scratch at the door, and then finally he was doing his long stretch up and just starting to like pull on the handle, trying to get through the handle. And I was like, all right. Either we're gonna put up with this for the next 10 minutes, or I'm just gonna take care of it right now.
And then when you're done, he could be like, okay, Dad, I'm back. I want to.
Yeah, right.
So, I think I talked a lot.
Well, I asked you a lot of questions. It was nice because when we were at the picnic last year, we chatted about Zelda a lot actually, and there was a lot going on. But it was kind of nice because here's the thing: when you talk about favorite video games, that's obviously a very personal experience for everyone who speaks about it. It's literally they are the only one with that experience, with that subjective view, I guess, which is a weird way of saying it. And so it is a bit intimate, and so it was nice to kind of learn a little bit more about you today, Ed. And I even was able to think a little bit about myself and why I like certain games. And I even realized a few things about what parts of what games make me like them. That's not a very good sentence, but I'll just go with it.
And for just to know my age, David, I'm 42.
Oh, okay. I'm 41. Yeah, you're 1 year older than me. I didn't realize. I was born in 81.
Oh, okay. I feel honored.
I thought you were. I thought you were like mid-30s when I met you. I thought you have a youthful presence, Ed.
Oh no, I was. I'm up there. Actually, it's a funny story that you mentioned that. I used to work at JCPenney outlet, and this man, just because I look young, he thought I was a teenage punk who didn't know how to do a return. So he went to someone who looks older.
Yep.
Went to that older person. The older person didn't know what to do and came to me. And I went to the transaction. And he was just flabbergasted. His mouth was dropped. And he later on came to me. He was just like, I apologize for thinking you was young and didn't know nothing. I was like, sir, I've been at the service desk for 2.5 years. Regardless of how I look, it's an experience that I had in this department that I know stuff. Don't just go on looks. You should know that if I'm working behind here, I'm going to do my best to provide service.
Absolutely.
Now, you may have some young punk teen who hasn't given you service, but sir, I'm going to give you service.
I like that.
Now I'm gonna need you to go down there to the food court and go get me some McDonald's if you apologize. Because my brother's hungry and I can't leave.
Oh, Ed, we forgot to say that that you have technically appeared in another Zelda podcast episode. You were in our live quiz episode from the Video Game Summit from a year or two ago. Whenever they did it again when we were coming out of COVID. Wait, was
last
it before?
year?
Was it only last year? Was it last summer?
Last year, yeah. Because Celeste and came down.
Yeah, you're right. It was only last summer. Yeah.
Yeah, because we ended up. Yeah, we did the quiz on Saturday. We explored Chicago Sunday because we went to Wrigley Field.
That's right.
You know that they actually let me in because I couldn't get a ticket and everything was sold out and stuff. And so I was just like, okay, I'll bum around the city and wait for you guys to come back from the Wrigley tour. And the person was just like, oh, we got tickets open. You could just the guy was just like, I'll let you go buy the next ticket and just come in and I'll just rip it up and let you go. So I got that following ticket, was just like, yes, came back, the guy let me in and I got to explore Wrigley Field for the first time with Celeste and everybody.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. I was over here like trying to set up set up tables and set up sodas and beer and whatnot, so that when you guys got done, you were able to come over here, and that was a lot of fun. But so that episode, I think it's called a live quiz episode on AZP.
Yeah.
If people want to hear you on our show, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a stressful day. We got through it by the skin of our teeth, but as far as the episode goes, it was all very successful.
I was so excited to meet everybody. I was excited to meet Stephanie. I finally got to meet Celeste. I got to meet her boyfriend. Got to meet you and your girlfriend. And shout out to your girlfriend or fiance or when she dropped me off at the train station, we was in her car talking. Yeah. We literally could have podcast in her car.
Oh, really?
We was having such a good conversation. I think we literally got talking about grocery stores.
We got to start a grocery store podcast now. We got to get the two of you up.
And I was just like, when she dropped me off the train station, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the train that I passed your house. I'm just like, wow. We just had a really great time.
She did mention you guys had a nice conversation to the station, but anyway. Yes.
So, but everybody, that's gonna be it for expansion.
This was fun. I like this, man. Is this what the show's? No, so I haven't actually seen Expansion Pass before. Is it usually just kind of chatting like this?
Yeah, it's like we come with a topic, and then we just have a discussion. And if we got side tangents, we could go ahead and have that side tangent. It's such a laid back, free form discussion. So and some of the times the things that we don't cover in Power Block, we'll bring to Expansion Pass.
I see. Expansion Pass, of course.
Yes. So last week we actually didn't have a topic. We actually had a low key discussion about what makes your favorite list. So okay. Me and Corey are doing a top 30. I think I told you this yesterday.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the meeting. Yeah.
So our top 30, and we got to talking. My question was, I'm like, what does it take to make you put a game on your list? And we literally we've been talking about Sega, Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, and we were just talking about games that make our list and why it's hard to create it. And it was a really good episode, really good discussion. And we had some technical problems, I think, but we were just literally just like, it was a laid back conversation where we don't have to think. We could just be us.
Yeah. Well, I felt like this one was pretty laid back too. I really enjoyed it, Ed. I really did. Thank you for asking me to come on and fill in for Corey just for a little bit here, but it was absolutely my pleasure to be a part of this.
Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you, David?
Mostly people can find me at Another Zelda Podcast. AnotherZeldaPodcast.com is our show. And, I can do all the Twitters and everything. But if you just go to AnotherZeldaPodcast.com, you'll find some bunch of episodes, some blogs that are being written. We do have our little merch store going now, which is a lot of fun. One thing I'm working on right now is I've actually recently, in the past year, I've gone back to school. I'm literally attending Columbia College again, 20 years after I left it back when I was 20.
Oh, wow.
And I haven't really talked to anybody about this yet, but I guess we've been getting to know each other today, Ed. And my next show that I'll be doing is going to be a show called Returning Student, and I've been interviewing my professors, and I've been interviewing people in the city that work in radio and podcasts and stuff like that. To talk about how media has changed over the past 20 years. I've been interviewing my professors to talk about how education has changed over the past 20 years. And so that show will come out like in September. It's a long ways off, but I'm in the middle of editing it right now, and I'm very, very proud of it and very, very pleased with it. So that's hopefully in the future, people will be able to find me at Returning Student. And I wasn't really planning on talking about that. It's not actually that's not even a good plug because it's not coming out for months, but I'm just so excited. I'm in the middle of it right now. So it's like right now I'm a painter in the middle of a painting and I'm really loving it. So I guess I just had to express that. But that's pretty much it. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Raptor Paint, which actually is technically a joke about a Jurassic Park version of Mario Paint. That was it was a joke that happened like 15 years ago and it turned into my handle. And so now I'm Raptor Paint. Which I totally am fine with that name as my main handle. I think that's it. That's it, Ed. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at that retro code and Instagram on that retro code. You can check out more of Nintendo Special Pass on bossrush.net on our YouTube channel. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you get the show a week early. If you go up to our $5 tier, you could be a Patreon producer and get your name shouted out in it. Funny that you mentioned school, and we're gonna leave after this. I've been wanting to go back to school, but work. It's been such a confusing thing with work, and it's not work's fault or anything. I have this fear that when I go back to school, work is going to be not in the way, but it's going to cause a problem there because it's just like, who do we find to replace me when I'm not there?
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So it's just I'm trying to figure out because I got a few credits that I need to go ahead and get. Like I gotta go take it's a speech. Where you gotta deliver like talks and stuff. You gotta write your speech out and deliver and stuff. I think it's speech.
It might just be speech. There's a word for that. Is it rhetoric or something like that? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I gotta take that class to get my last credit. I need to actually go to a counselor, bring up my grades and things and be like, what do I need to do in order to graduate? Because I was going to school for philosophy.
Oh, really?
And yes. And now I think, because I always say that I was a ghetto philosopher because it was just like, I think the reason why I put it that way is because I'm reading all this philosophy and I'm talking to people and stuff. And it's just like, I talk to people more in a logical sense that I say it, but it's not always the way that it comes out. And these philosophers are kind of, yes, they know what they're talking about, but they're talking about stuff that was during their time, not what we're dealing with today. And it's kind of just like I'm just like, now I'm in the sense that where do I fit in? Because I think I am media. I've been doing podcasts. And I've been hosting and stuff. And it's just like, I think I'm great at having conversations with people.
Yeah.
And hosting and or being a co-host and stuff. And I'm getting to where I am doing more research and preparing better. That's what I really need to do. Because it's just like, I could do a video game podcast. That doesn't really take much to do. But I'm just like, if I want to do something that I'm really dedicated to break things down and, educate people, I really need to sit down and do some research.
Well, that's been a little scary for me for returning student, because I'm lining up interviews with some of these people are like micro celebrities even, and it's like I'm like really scared sometimes. I go in and you have to really know, like even we're sitting here chatting and this is awesome, and Another Zelda Podcast is that way too, where you kind of push record, talk about the topic that you want to talk about, and then you stop recording. But with returning student, I'm like having like real actual interviews with people, and it's terrifying, but it's a lot of fun. I am going back to school for podcasting. It's technically through the radio major at Columbia. So I'll get my degree in podcasting here, even though I've been podcasting since 2006. But anyway, so maybe along my journey here, Ed, I can share some thoughts with you as we go, because I support you in fulfilling yours as well.
Yeah. Well, with that, everybody, have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next time on Nintendo Expansion Pass. Once again, thank you, David Geisler. Everybody, do check out SixFive Media. Go support them. And check out Another Zelda Podcast and all the work that they do over there. With that, everybody, we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ed.